explanation, and there's some evidence to back that up. There's other evidence contrary to it. It's one of many competing theories as to why. We don't know why the dinosaurs died out. Yes?
Last year, I think it was, over in the Dover area, where I used to work, this probably 10-ish at night, we saw when it came back. It had a bluish green to it.
Yeah.
And it exploded. We saw the streak coming across. It was just a very bright streak, kind of like the one you saw in Russia, was very bright initially.
Yeah, bright, and actually they can appear to be wavy and kind of smoky.
And
yeah, a lot of them are green.
This one then made an explosion type. It was in the air, way up. I mean, it's not that you could hear. And then it went like a flash, and then that was it.
Yeah, that was the same thing as the Russian one, probably nowhere near as big. That one might have been, maybe that big.
Really, so I thought they were like some huge thing, but so we're talking something this big, you see that much through the sky.
Well, the ones you can see, the ones you normally see at night, the little ones where you just see a streak, are generally pebble-sized or smaller. Yeah. Now, I grew up in a town called Wethersfield, Connecticut, which is just south of Hartford. And Wethersfield's notable, famous in meteorite circles. Bob Villiers said, "Oh yeah, Wethersfield," because during the 20th century, there were 2 meteors that actually fell to the ground and were found, the brand new fell to the ground meteors in Wethersfield. One of them, a guy came down and went down into his living room, and in front of the fireplace on the rug is a rock. And he looked up, and there's a hole in the ceiling, and there's a hole in the roof. The thing smashed right through his house. There's a guy in, I think it's Peekskill, New York. It's one of the towns along the Hudson in New York, where the guy came out and a meteorite had smashed right through the engine block of his car. So these things fall all the time, and they can be spectacularly bright sometimes. I've had the fortune of seeing a couple of the big fireballs like that.
Yeah, I've never seen anything that's the coolest one like that. So
Oh,
some
yeah.
guy, it was reported that some guy found a piece of it, and it was in the news, you were reporting it went out.
There was one just a few weeks ago that was visible. I didn't see it, but a lot of people in New Hampshire saw it.
They said it went down somewhere in Maine.
Yeah, it landed somewhere in Maine.
They were offering a reward if anybody found any.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard if they had found it.
Yeah, but no, that would have been visible all up and down the East
Oh, it was
Coast.
the East Coast, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
How would you tell the difference between like a small meteorite and a rock? Like how would you know?
Okay, go ask Bob about that. Most of the meteorites are made out of iron with a bit of nickel in it, and they tend to be magnetic. They tend to be magnets. And so one thing about them is that most meteorites, since they're made out of solid iron, are much, much heavier for their size than normal rocks, which are made out of silica, which is a much less dense material. So you see this, the club has one that is about this size, and you go to lift the thing up and it's like, whoa, this thing is heavy. It's like, lifting half of a dumbbell. And so that's one, you can tell by the composition. And Bob has in fact had, one of his ambitions is to try to locate the first meteor that's been discovered in New Hampshire. No one's found one in New Hampshire yet. And the main reason for that is that you can blame the glaciers for that, because the glaciers kind of scraped away everything that had been embedded in the soil. So whereas if you're in the southern parts of the United States, you've got the advantage of many, many millions of years worth of meteors by chance having fallen to the ground, waiting there to be discovered, buried in the ground, whereas up here it all got scraped away. So we only have a couple thousand years worth, and there have been some near misses, like there's the 2 in Connecticut and the one up in Maine just recently, but haven't found one in New Hampshire yet. And yeah, Bob calls the true ones meteorites and the other ones meteor wrongs. And he's had people bring him a bunch of rocks that look unusual, but they turn out to be meteor wrongs. If you can get him started on the subject, he'll go on it for hours. But it really is fascinating. Yes?
Before I had a telescope some long time ago, and I could see what they call a nebula. Will you be seeing anything like that tonight?
Well, I showed you one of those in the presentation here. There's
Right.
one, this over here, the Ring Nebula is an example of that.
Okay.
Now, there are also, there are a bunch, if you were to stay out past midnight, there are a bunch of other nebulae that are crowded around the constellations of Sagittarius towards the core of the galaxy, where you're looking inwards towards the next spiral arm. And there's several gas clouds in there, which we think are regions where stars are condensing out of the gas clouds.
One I saw before.
The one you probably will probably stick in your mind is the Great Nebula in Orion, which is one of the most spectacular of them. It's one of the brightest and largest in apparent size from the Earth, and you can actually see it with the naked eye, but it's quite spectacular in a telescope.
Yeah, this was, I don't know where, all I was doing was screwing around with it, looking at stuff that's up there, and I just happened to come across it, you know, not even.
Yeah, there are a bunch of them out there. You notice that I've been talking about a bunch of objects that have M followed by a number. The M stands for an astronomer by the name of Charles Messier. And Monsieur Messier lived in the 1700s, mid-1700s, and he was a comet hunter. He had a small telescope. This would run circles around the telescope he had. He lived in suburban Paris and was using his telescope, scanning the sky, looking for comets. And in particular, one time he was looking for the return of Halley's Comet, because Edwin Halley had, in the 1600s, seen one of the great comets go by and charted its path across the sky. And around that time, Isaac Newton had come out with his laws of gravitation, and Kepler had come out with equations for predicting orbits of, for modeling the orbits of the planets around the sun. And he predicted that this was following a very eccentric elliptical orbit, and it would be back in 76 years. And he, in fact, when he did research, found out that if you calculate back that 76-year period, a lot of the great comets that were recorded in history are the same comet coming back over and over again. And in fact, there is a depiction of Halley's Comet. It appeared in the sky and had a close approach to the sun in 1066, and it appears on the commemorative tapestry that William the Conqueror had made after he defeated Harold and conquered England. And there's one of the panels in the Bayeux tapestry that shows a comet in the sky, and it says Estimerant Stella, wandering star. And that was Halley's Comet. So it was supposed to come back around 1740 or something like that, and all the comet hunters were out looking for it, and they wanted to be the first one to have seen it come back in approach. And it was supposed to appear near the constellation, be first bright enough to be seen in telescopes when it was in the constellation Taurus. And so he looked a couple of degrees away from a star called Zeta Tauri, and there was a little oval patch of light in his telescope. He says, "Ah, voila, is the comet at Halley?" And he makes all these notes on it and takes careful measurements of it. And they came back and looked at it again in a few days to see how far it had moved, and it hadn't budged. That's when he says, "Oh, there's one of these patches of light." He keeps tripping over these little glowing patches in the sky, and so he started making a list of them. And the first one on that list was that little object off of Zeta Tauri called M1, and we know it first in Messier's catalog, and we know it as the Crab Nebula. This, in his telescope, he wouldn't have been able to see the ring structure. He would have just seen an oval patch of light, and so that was number 57 in his catalog. And he eventually published a catalog. In his lifetime, he published a list of 103 of these fuzzy objects in the sky that you shouldn't mistake for comets. And some of them are galaxies, some of them are nebulae, some of them are star clusters. So M13, for example, the globular star cluster, looks like a little round patch of light in the tiny telescope or in binoculars. So that's where those M numbers come from. And okay, anything else? Yes?
Can you tell us a little bit about the New Hampshire Society? That you
Oh,
belong
Hampshire
to?
Astronomical
Yeah.
Society. Yeah, we're a club of statewide of people who are interested in astronomy. Some of us have telescopes, a lot of us do, some of us don't. It's just a, you know, a special interest group in astronomy. You don't have to have a telescope to join, you just have to be interested in the subject. And one of the main purposes and objectives of our club is public education and outreach, which is why I'm here tonight, why we're out there with the telescopes. And we have also, one of our members was the one who came up with this idea of placing lending telescopes in libraries, where you can check the telescope out just like a book for a week or two, whatever the policy of the library is. And as you can see here, we've done, this is a telescope called the starblast. It's a 4.5-inch reflector telescope manufactured by a company called Orion. And we've done some modifications on it. We've got everything tethered here so that you can't lose the lens caps. And also some of the adjustment screws have been removed to make it more or less tamper-proof. And it comes with a zero magnification red dot finder on here, so you can just put the telescope on a table like this, move it up and down, and you look through here and you line up a little red dot on whatever it is you want to look at, the moon or whatever, and then when you look through the eyepiece over here, you'll be right in there. And it's got a zoom eyepiece, so you don't have to worry about replacing eyepieces at night and losing them. It also comes with some accessories here. There's a nice book that the National Audubon Society puts out that shows star maps and constellation maps, and has all of the
How long do you rent it for?
objects that you might want to look at through a telescope, such as all the Messier objects. And it also comes with a construction book here.
Instructions
It's
to,
this.
Yeah, we can show you.
yeah.
Oh, this is, you probably want this as a checkout receipt in here.
Thank you.
A little card about us that we put in, and
How often do you meet? And, you
we
know,
meet once a month. We have a business meeting once a month. Other than that, we have a whole bunch of events. Some of them are members only, some of them not. We have a coffee house night, and that is at our dark sky site, which is in Hillsborough Upper Village. It's outside Hillsborough Upper Village. One of our members has a farm up there, and he graciously donated some hilltop land up there and let us put an observatory building and also a warming hut, highly useful if you're observing in the winter up there. And that is available, that site is available to all club members. You can just drive up there and anytime you want. And we have some members who join the club just for access to that site. But other than that, we have various activities. We do a lot of these outreach activities, which are an awful lot of fun. At least I find it an awful lot of fun to show off the sky to people.
And how much is the membership fee?
Membership is $30 a year, and that gets you access to the dark sky site. That gets you access to all the expertise of the club members. If you're interested in any aspect of amateur astronomy, like photo imaging, you've seen some of the pictures, some of the images there that some of our members have taken with telescopes not very much larger than this one. And we have actual people doing research, and we have teachers and so on of astronomy in the club, so it's a good resource. If you're thinking of buying a telescope, then having access to our members, you'll get more advice than you could ever wish for about what to buy and that kind of thing, because everyone's got their own opinions on that sort of stuff. Other questions? You have one back there?
Yeah, I was curious, but what kind of cameras is this on to take those pictures with?
These first few over here were taken with a Canon 350D Rebel.
Oh, excuse me, don't mind. I'll take my kid, he's feeling sleepy. So
Okay.
I'll show him the telescope and then yeah, he'll. But
Okay,
thank you for the
No,
presentation.
Yeah, we're about wrapped up here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can take a normal digital SLR camera, and you can do astrophotography with it. You can get images of this quality over here. Now there are also very highly sensitive purpose-built cameras that are specially made just for doing astrophotography. And it's like the photo hobby itself. You know, you can go anywhere from the little cheap throwaway cameras all the way up to spending many thousands of dollars just on the lens. It's the same thing with astrophotography.
I was just curious.
But this is a standard. The first few of these were taken with just a plain old standard off-the-shelf digital SLR camera. And some extra equipment, of course, to attach it to the telescope.
Yeah.
Plus you need a mount that will actually track the rotation of the Earth so that the object doesn't drift out. There's a lot of expensive accessory equipment you need, you know, not just the camera. And then the special software to process the images that you take. Modern photography differs from the astrophotography before the digital era in that now what people do is they take many, many tens or hundreds even of images, and then you use computer software to stack them on top of each other, and it sort of adds them up. And what that does is that will cancel out all the atmospheric effects and aberration caused by turbulence in the Earth's atmosphere get canceled out, and the actual real parts of the image reinforce each other. So these images right here, which are taken with a standard off-the-shelf DSLR, they would have killed for this quality of image from you know, a professional, big, permanently mounted telescope at some university back in the 1970s.
How did you get involved in this?
Well, I've been involved since I was a kid. My dad bought a small telescope similar in power to the library telescope here. It was on a tripod, and back when I was in high school. And so I used to go out, and my mother still remembers going out to a cow pasture in Wethersfield, Connecticut, at, you know, late at night, you know, freezing cold in the middle of the winter when you got nice dark clear skies, and you know, looking at this and that, or actually standing around and freezing while I'm looking at this and that. And I kind of got out of the hobby after college, you know, going busy in college and at work, and got back into it about, let's see, I joined the New Hampshire Astronomical Society in 2004, just a little bit before the first transit of Venus in the 2000s. And I've since then bought several telescopes. One of the problems with this hobby is that, as with any other hobby, if you're not careful, you can end up with more telescopes than you know what to do with.
So you
But that's how I got into it.
Are you upgrading? Is that why you're buying more telescopes?
Well, some of them are for different purposes.
Such as?
My main workhorse telescope, the one that I use probably the most, has a 14-inch wide mirror. It's a big brother of the library telescope. It sits on a ground platform like this. It sits on the ground. It stands about yay tall. It's about that in diameter. And I have the telescope that I have. The gear that I have out there now is a very rugged tripod with a very expensive refractor telescope as opposed to this reflector over here on it. It's really an astrograph. It was built and designed mainly for astrophotography. And I bought up Herb Hubert's old gear. I have his Canon 350D Rebel and some of the other equipment to take images. I haven't actually done any imaging because half of imaging involves sitting around and tweaking the images in Photoshop and other computer software. You know, all the software for stacking things on top of each other. And I'm a computer programmer by profession, so I spend all day long sitting in front of a computer. I don't need a hobby that makes me sit in front of computers for hours on end.
Bravo for you.
So I haven't really done any astrophotography yet to speak of. I took one image of the moon once.
We ready to go up, Paul?
Yeah, we're ready to go out.
Great. Thank
Thank
you
you
very
for
much.
coming.
That was fantastic. Please please help yourself to some lemonade and cookies if you need a snack before you head up, and grab a bookmark of our other upcoming events, okay? Enjoy the viewing.
Oh, one thing I'll mention,
Oh, yeah.
before you go,